Oh my goodness. Okay. So, today begins a series where I start reading Sadly Porn by The Last Psychiatrist. I've had like 2 drinks. I just realized it's lorem ipsum on the back cover. Um, well, I guess it's the first line, and then on the back, it's like actually in Latin. I'm not gonna read that. That's like not really important right now. I guess I start with the disclaimer, and I think I will do that for this segment. Because that's like the first sort of like definite section, but it might also like take 15 years because there's footnotes interspersed throughout the book, and like this is the actual text, and then like all of this is footnote. So I just like flip to a page, but it's like this throughout the book, and I have to basically my plan is the way this is structured. I read if there's a footnote, I go and I read the entire footnote and then return to where I was reading. So that it's gonna be a bit odd and clunky. I feel like I really don't have any like priors on this book except for what Parker has sent. He like managed to summarize it somehow. And I don't really remember what it's about right now. And I said I was going to be doing this for the bounty. So let's begin, shall we? And I'll read it like an elementary school teacher. No. Table of contents is disclaimer, followed by I really don't know where I'm gonna break this up as far as like chapters go. I think I'll just like find a stopping point. I don't know. Disclaimer, then the next section in the table of contents is my husband and his rival bet on who was the better man, and I won. And then there's this quote here. See the woman, the bloom on the woman, you can see her again and again, anytime you want. Disclaimer. I went down yesterday to Piraeus. No, wait, that wasn't me. What is pornography? I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. So you're the one who decides? No, it's subjective. Porn could be different things to different people. So everyone gets to decide? No, there's no objective criteria. So no one gets to decide? No, thank God. Many people find it hard to have a rational discussion about pornography with other people because other people don't exist. You may as well try to discuss porn with an ox, if you can find one, if you will listen. Other generations exist because you hate them, but such dialogues are tricky because the old can't help but see sexuality as part of a continuum towards death because they are closer to death than they are to lust, so much that rather an old guy thinking the young are sex obsessed, he forgets they are sex obsessed, forgets how sex and love frame all their decisions, forget that the kid looking idly around a train car isn't thinking about bladder capacities or his boss's incompetence. He's daydreaming about gazing at his beloved or ejaculating on a chick as he explains to her that she knows she likes it. First footnote. Of course, in real life, he wouldn't be daydreaming about sex. He'd be looking at it on his pornotron. That's not a joke. It is the central problem of our time. Men regularly whisper what women wonder out loud. Why do the most desirable women have the least devoted boyfriends? The usual explanation of arrogance and misogyny assume what's impossible if you spend a moment on it, that these desirable women somehow can't attract devoted men. And because these men all seem to have the same kind of tattoos, the assumption presumes they attract men who are reliably unreliable. But it's evident that these men aren't invested, everyone easily leaving his woman to the mercy of greater numbers. Intercourse happens only with fear, so every man husbands his girlfriend just enough to make do, making no plans and planting no seeds, because you don't know when some other bull will inevitably invade and carry her away. God knows you can't keep her walled in, and if you landed her, she's got to be easy to plow. Why commit? Is it plow or plow? Why commit? I think it's plow. Why commit? She'll just end up cheating anyway. You expected a desirable woman to be devoted enough for the both of you? Such men simply settle to be the boyfriend of any such woman, plowing just enough to satisfy themselves day to day and make no bones about being with someone else next year. But because of this, they never show any ability, either for wealth or achievement or anything else. The most desirable of the women are always the most susceptible to these turnovers of boyfriends. The desirability of these women increases the power of their men, but makes these men susceptible to betrayal and to the plottings of others. Thus, the woman least fought over invites the most devotion, the combination of the two being able to build an empire. Porn becomes the solution to a problem you didn't know you had, which isn't genetic, but arithmetic. Rather than evolution magically matching fecund brunettes to instinct-driven reproduction machines that want to impregnate as many uteros as possible using the Darwinian strategy of facials, the men do a quick calculation. How much energy should I give to what will surely be taken from me, especially if beforehand I make it radiate even more brightly? Why am I attracted to those I can't have? Why do I date people I shouldn't? Why don't I understand myself better? Like the Delphic oracle commands, know thyself, you know the oracle isn't really all-knowing, right? Did you stop and wonder why professional manipulators carved this into their temple? Didn't Socrates also believe it? The liars certainly told you so. Excuse my very mild slurring. I've had like 2 drinks and I've been on Ratatrutide for like 2 weeks, so I'm like twice as drunk. But I digress. The answers to your questions are irrelevant. Those aren't your questions. Those are your defenses that safely protect you from asking other questions. What am I getting out of porn? Try. What is porn getting you out of? The media scienticians tell us that it destroys self-esteem, relationships, and careers, but the media can't show porn, so talking about it is their way of capitalizing on it while taking credit for being above it. Don't listen to them. They are using you. If they made up the woman to deliver the news, you can be sure they made up the news for it to be delivered. Porn is just unreal images. It doesn't mean anything. It isn't bad or good. So, nothing in excess? One interesting discovery I made... Holy shit, this is long. One interesting discovery I made, and you're going to think this is obvious, is that most people masturbate while they are watching porn. To completion. Easy. Baby steps. They don't watch it. They don't watch it. They then retreat to a safe room and masturbate the rest of the way to a porn-inspired fantasy, reshot, recasted, and redirected in their head. There is no fantasy. They are led mechanically to the orgasm. But what makes it diabolical is that it feels like you are fantasizing. It feels like they got it, like it's... excuse me. It feels like they got it, like it's your fantasy presciently or coincidentally acted on screen. I know porn isn't real, but how did they know this is what I liked? Change liked from past tense back to future conditional, and then contrast the pornitron to how Judge Reinhold masturbated to a red bikinied Phoebe Cates coming out of the pool in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. He's not actually seeing it, he's imagining it. Note that this famous scene, which we have mostly forgotten didn't happen, also inspired a generation of real-life masturbation fantasies, which is why it is a great contrast for the way we fantasize now. Reinhold took what he saw and then masturbated to a fantasy. We want the reality to obliterate the fantasy. Edging is the porn addict's response to getting too much of what he wants. With all the truth and none of the fantasy, it's your brain trying to take some autonomy back from the automation, and in the future that will be built into the software so you don't miss the lack. Anybody who has ever been deep in even the best video porn for too long has experienced the paradoxical relief that comes when you stumble on static photos. Suddenly there's room to breathe. Suddenly you're free to fantasize. Now what? Now you need a video. Fast. Generating your own sexual fantasy has no payoff and thus no reinforcement because after the orgasm there's nothing left. All that work you put into refining what you want becomes afterwards merely a memory of what you'll never have. You're way better off spending hours a day watching videos of your deceased child. Whoa, why'd you bring that up? Because the mechanism is the same. The lack of payoff is the same. Drowning out reality with unreal images? No. Drowning in video reality to drown out unreality. Anything so your mind is not ruminating, fantasizing. The painful video memories seem masochistic, but they are 100% defensive because to a person stuck in mourning, sorry, complicated bereavement, sorry, major depressive disorder, he really is the last psychiatrist, do you see how they want to castrate you and leave you only porn? The only way to know yourself is with their jargon. The videos are absolutely more tolerable than closing your eyes and seeing him in your obsessive imagination over and over and over and over. The pathology isn't in the fact of the images, it is in the replacement of images. It is a disorder of thinking, it is a disorder of math. You can say the digital images are painful, but they are far less threatening than imagination. You are sad, you are so sad, but you are not changed, you are still you. Because the sadness feels like it's all on you. Everyone else seems to have moved on. So you condemn yourself to the entire mourning. Those videos and your grief are the only thing keeping him alive. One might suggest that the way to lessen the pain of perpetual mourning is to take your pathology literally. Since you are obsessed by the thoughts, then you must commit yourself to the full OCD. Give yourself a ritual that has a fixed set of rules you must be compelled to follow. I must eat peas in his honor every Tuesday. I must carry a red Lego in my pocket. I must spend 10 seconds every day reciting his favorite quote that then seemed so banal, yet now proves his soul was timeless. Quote, life is made up of meetings and paintings. Such is the way of it. Job 2:13, Kermit the Frog. You keep the fetish, and then slowly it will let you go. When General Pericles lay dying and the surrounding idiots were taking credit for recalling his achievements, he borrowed 3 seconds from the afterlife to reanimate and declare his most praiseworthy achievement. No one can say that because of me the Athenians were clad in black clothes of complicated bereavement. That is something a man can be proud of, though it's an odd thing to assert when a quarter of the population had just died, not because he'd sent them far from home to fight a war, but because he kept them home to avoid fighting it. And I know this isn't what he meant, but in one way he was literally correct. The Athenians didn't mourn him. Well, they should have. With porn, there is no work in fantasizing and no guilt in this fantasy. After all, it's not yours. So too with actual sex. As long as the cheating was pornographic, there can be no guilt. This has always been true. Always true. You do know that in the Victorian era, if a woman was caught in adultery, she could be burned as a witch. I think you're confusing 2 eras, 2 books, and 3 punishments. In the Salem witch trials of 1692, the standard high school teaching is that though they may have believed in witches, the trials were really about the established patriarchal order punishing women who represented ideological threats to their power. But as the accusers were primarily teenage girls, you could also say the trials reveal how easy it is for hysterical nobodies to manipulate the existing power structure via their dad, with nothing more than spectral evidence to turn on those who may have once had some power, but society was now mostly done with so we're an easy comparator to Peacock's self-righteousness, and thus cause mass hysteria. All for no reason, except possibly the desire... What?
They're all leaving.
Okay, hold on. Sorry, I've returned now with a Sapporo. I don't know where I left off. Okay, I think I had kind of stumbled through the sentence, flipping onto page 10. Holy shit. Sapporo. Cheers. And so this too. Spectral evidence to turn on those who may have once had some power, but society was now mostly done with, so were an easy comparator to Peacock's self-righteousness, and thus caused mass hysteria, all for no reason, except possibly the desire to brand themselves as relevant to the debate and spite. NB, it's not a perspective, I don't know if that's an acronym for something, but I'm just going to read them. NB, it's not a perspective that you'll be allowed to bring up in class. No biggie? If the logic is that the trials were a form of ideological persecution, then the one victim who refused to confess technically died a martyr against the patriarchy. Unfortunately for this logic, it was a man. My guess is you don't know his name or that he was a power lifter. America has always seen sex as something shameful. Yes, shame. I figured you'd bring that up. Which is more shameful, getting caught masturbating to porn or getting caught masturbating with your eyes closed? Because one of those makes you a sociopath. Your inner thoughts are always more depraved to everyone else. Porn is less shameful because, well, it's not yours. Before you finish nodding, please observe that it's kind of the opposite for women. You are living through the product recall of Freud's steam-driven invention, the obliteration of all unconscious fantasy, thus locking us down into the existing reality. Someone else is unconscious. At first, the fantasies were encouraged because advertisers could use them to draw us in. Well, we're all inside the walls, and we're not going anywhere. So now the fantasies are at best superfluous, and at worst a threat. So, porn suppresses the imagination? Ha! Liar! I have to write sentences with multiple dependent clauses in order to repair the damage of your 5-word rhetorical cluster grenade. Of course it could, if there was anything left of it. The suppression of the imagination came first, and porn was the inevitable, and a much welcome defense against its loss, even as it could help suppress it further. I know this seems backwards. I know this seems like madness. I wish it was. A demonstration with pornography's own logic. Take Rule 34. If you can imagine something, there's a porn of it. If this is a valid logical proposition, we should be able to make the contrapositive to our horror. If there's no porn of it, you can't imagine it. Even attempts at fixing Rule 34 solidify the logic. Rule 35. If there is no porn of it, then it will be made. Which means even when the porn is made to exist, it still does not follow that you will be able to imagine it. Sorry, you're the one who wanted porn to have rules. I'm only showing you why. If your desire and wanting were intact, then all the porn in the universe could only be a tool. All the reality of the universe would only be a tool, not to replace fantasy, but to facilitate it. The way Judge Reinhold watched through a window at Phoebe Cates sitting by the pool, and then turned off the window to stop looking at her so he could be free to fantasize about her coming out of the pool. And B, the movie was directed by a woman. I still don't know what NB means. It was not, as you might think you remember, a real-life, real-time embellishment of eyes wide open reality, parentheses, sexier walk, sultry look, add some mascara and let water be your proxy for touching her all over. Closing. By the time his pants are down, she hadn't even yet jumped into the pool. If you want to get psychoanalytic, the fantasy of her coming out... I think the page break was intentional. The fantasy of her coming out caused her to jump in. Come on, that's impossible. Not if it's the audience's fantasy. The criticism I should be making is, why did he pursue a fantasy and not the real girl? Why didn't he just go outside and show her his phallus or even act like a dick and see what happens? Why not some act of will? But I was born a little too early and way too late. Our desires have changed, and the best I can do now is convince you to shut the window, to work through what you want and how you want. So, I can have more satisfying relationships? No, so you don't destroy everyone else. No one would do that kind of detailed fantasizing today. You'll argue that no one ever did this, yet there it is on film, and at the time his actions made sense to everyone. Not a single person said, why would he close his eyes? Why wouldn't he just jack it while watching her? At this point, you should wonder why. If it made sense then, do you now remember the scene wrong now? Which is why the climax of that scene is Delphic fate. Psychic determinism. While he's fantasizing about her coming up to him as she takes her top off, she accidentally walks in on him coming with his bottoms off. Doesn't anyone knock anymore? He says as Kate averts her gaze. That's supposed to be the punchline. Is it funny? No, it's terrifying. Here's a knock-knock joke for you. Ready? Go. Repressed. And you. So I will actually format it this way. Aren't you supposed to say knock-knock? It's repression, not suppression. What's repressed never knocks, it just returns. Why would you be surprised? They were in the bathroom, and after all, the only place private enough to allow the extremes of way too real and far too imaginary to coexist. A funnier and more accurate line for Reinhold would have been, Now look what you made me do. But the question for you in your hornet's nest heart is whether Reinhold was running the opposite game. Had he unconsciously planned to get caught? Did he know without knowing that she'd accidentally walk in on him sitting on that toilet, not peeing like a girl, but fully erect like a man? Was he acting out his engorged penis a message to her about his sexuality, its intensity, a way of making himself less real, more like his own fantasy? Oh, does that sound complicatedly bananas? But how many times do people take only the most superficial of all precautions? I added that word. Superficial of precautions with their porn and thus get caught by their partner. Is that on purpose? Look, I still have personal and unique sexual thoughts. See how big I can get when I get what I want? Message received, though the fact you found it on one of no more than 5 internationally known websites makes your uniquity highly suspect, so you'll forgive me if I mark this message and your genitals as junk. You can ask it the other way, the way that matters in your life. When she walked in on him, did you think that he thought that she thought that he was... Wait, hold on. You can ask it the other way, the way that matters in your life. When she walked in on him, did you think that he thought that she thought he was masturbating to her or to someone else? Which would she have thought was worse? Which is more embarrassing to him, that she discovers that he likes her or that she discovers that he lusts after her? Which discovery about him requires a response from her? You'll say love, of course, because you know that his lust has nothing to do with her, just her body, walk, scent, moves, gaze, status, whatever. She gets to choose when to disavow her always on sexuality, quote, that isn't me. Yet his love, which is based on nothing about her anyone can point to, is something she'd feel obligated to deal with either approvingly or through a protection order. But she'd literally be right. His lust has nothing to do with her, and which is why he turned off the window. But if the lust carries the lesser risk, why are you so nervous to approach some defenseless girl in a bar, yet you have no shame sending a woman walled up in her fortress a 10-page auto-biopic? I've only written Act 1 and I don't have financing, but the dialogue is a masterpiece and I want you to help me shoot it. You sleep now. Only dream theory can explain your behavior. Things may symbolize other things, but effect is always 100% correct. So your anxiety is telling you something important. Your desire to tap her drunk ass is your confused attempt at love, not lust, and your mind protected you from the mix-up by failing to try on purpose, while the spectacular love you feel writing your fictional backstory is way more about you and your character doing a DP on your DP, which is why you've spent so much time writing it. Now that you've read this, here's a question that should be easy to answer. Does secretly masturbating to Kate mean he would be satisfied if he got her or not? I guess it's not that easy. So if this hot bikini girl is the return of the repressed, then what was repressed? The real ordinary skin and bones girl behind his fantasy? Not to make a normalizing judgment, but for a real girl, she's fantastically hot. The reality of her hardly needs repression. If you're really fickle, soft lighting in a few beers will do. But it's 1981 and he loves her as well as lusts after her, and in 1981... Wait. But it's 1981 and he loves her as well as lust after her, and in 1981 and today it is well nigh impossible to masturbate to a woman you love unless you're imagining her with someone else, which is what Reinhold was doing. He's in the bathroom in the top half of his job's pirate costume, while the fantasy stud making out with the topless her is in a business suit. He has repressed himself. He has repressed the thoughts which conflict with this ideal self, and this is hardly a surgical excision. The uniform, the lack of confidence, and his non-sexual desire for her, his love for her, it all goes out the window, which he then closes so he can get down to business. And then in fantasy, it's returned as its gender and power opposite. He approaches with the hesitation, clothes, and deference of a Victorian gentleman, and she's horned up succubus, naked, powerful, and aggressively wet. Now it looks like she knows what she wants, which means he can act on it. Back to the question. Under these psychic conditions, would he be satisfied by her or not? There is a story, maybe apocryphal, but I'm going anyway, that Judge Reinhold, the actor, in order to generate the scene's shock in Phoebe Cates, the actress, was actually masturbating a giant dildo. So her startle, chuckle, grimace is an on-screen, real-life what the fuck. You can dismiss this as on-set shenanigans, but he wouldn't have dreamed of using a dildo if he had to perform a sex scene. Bringing a dildo towards a naked woman is real-life proof of what he wants and what he's missing. But masturbating without one is an enormous risk. It must be hard for a man to be watched pretending to be masturbating to the fantasy of being desired. Everyone will wonder how close that is to the truth. The best way is to negate the fantasies and offer reality. A. Look, no hands. Or B. Look, no penis. If you want to fake masturbating, you pretend to touch your penis. If you want to fake fantasizing, you actually touch a pretend penis. He went from desiring her to wanting to be desired by her, which is exactly the point of the scene and the inflection point of pomo no homo, sexual relations. It is the absence of the penis that makes one the object of desire. Evoke this absence in a more precise way by having him wear a cute fake one under a pirate costume, and you, or rather he, will have plenty to tell us about. The effect is 100% guaranteed, for men who don't beat around the bush, that is. This kind of masturbation yields a climax that never seems to move the story forward. It goes back to the beginning and repeats. To prove this, look for a commonality elsewhere that shows the story is a circle and not a mountain. Essentially, e.g., how do you read that? Essentially, it's not the first time or the last time he'll take off the pirate costume. Earlier, Reinhold was working at Captain Hook Fish and Chips in the pirate uniform and was told to go make a delivery, so he changes out of the uniform into street clothes, but his boss stops him. During deliveries, you'll still be a representative of Captain Hook Fish and Chips. Have some pride. You can well imagine the reaction of all the recently awoken Holden Caulfields watching the scene, enraged at the boss for making him wear the humiliating costume and having to address the customers in piratese, and consoling himself with tiny subversions like, "Arg! Here's a basket of hardtack and a joke for the table." A wench walks into a private bar and asks for a seaman and a towel. Ha! Funny as ever. So every 14-year-old knows exactly what he's thinking. Have some pride. In what? In his stupid minimum wage job? Why should he have any pride? He doesn't own the means of production. He's an exploited wage slave, and we all know that pride is the lie capitalism uses to make us work harder for them. The thing is, even if this were a fact, the knowledge doesn't get to anyone to do more push-ups or more math or become an actual pirate, let alone a captain. It doesn't move the story forward. It only gets you out of work, yours and your jobs. And instead of one exploited but concrete step forward, you solidify your status quo. You satisfy yourself with wearing street clothes at work and pillaging the occasional burger. To these, you are a kind of compensation. You deserve to steal a little back for yourself since you have no power. The idea that he could be proud of the business itself or what the owner had built, the form of this creative act, whether or not he benefits, that this respect costs him nothing and it might change him, such an idea is so revolting to his me versus them psychology that he pretends it's really an us versus them philosophy, and us has more important things in store for me, yet when he ditches the job and the burger out another window and goes back home to masturbate to the girl who is literally 15 feet but 2 psychologies away from him, he tells everyone to keep it down because he has work to do. At least he had the decency of shame. Today, that kind of work needs to be accepted because it is frantic, energetic, and utterly non-productive, a defense against change. You need to rethink about how you use porn. Stop listening to people who hate you. Stop listening to people who want to parlay about its meaning or lack of meaning, damn to the depths whatever man what thought of meaning. So much of the satisfaction, not interest, not pleasure, but satisfaction of watching porn is not just from seeing the sex act, nor a laziness to pursue sex, but from not having to generate the fantasy, not as an escape from reality. If anything, reality sex is becoming much more like a staging of porn, but an escape from fantasy into reality. If fantasizing is daydreaming, a semi-conscious elaboration of the unconscious, then avoiding fantasy is a way to avoid the terrible truth that we will never get our wish fulfillment. It is a way of not ever wondering what our wish fulfillment might look like, and the sad reason for this is that our wish fulfillment doesn't actually contain us. It's impossible. I don't really want to interpret my dreams. Then your unconscious probably doesn't bother to obfuscate them, so you can take them literally. Well, I don't remember my dreams. I'm not even sure I do dream. Could be the alcohol, or could they could be the alcohol, or they reveal too much. Are the results the same? Then it worked. You never want to know about your unconscious, so you're obsessed with learning about your conscious information, studying every detail to guard against what you are doing. So rather than fantasies that risk failure but at least clarify our real desires, we find it easier to want things we are told to want, that we don't want, but there can be no guilt in wanting to because they were commanded to be wanted. Since it's too painful to fantasize what will never come to pass, or shouldn't come to pass, we drown ourselves in other people's visions and are led mechanically to the end. See also politics, economics, and love. It is this logic that explains why women don't watch porn not like men do, and why the pop feminists attempt to normalize porn for women, to progressively embrace women's need for porn, should be resisted as a trap. It doesn't care what you want. It's teaching you how to want, like men. But female porn is different than male porn. You can't interpret it the same way. It has a totally different meaning. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Sometimes it's more than a cigar, but it's never not a cigar. Today we masturbate to porn out of obligation. That's stupid. And are you agreeing or disagreeing? Take a guy in a 5-year cohabiting relationship and watch what happens when his woman tells him she's going to visit her mom for the weekend. He looks forward to, be specific, porn and masturbating, but it's not like he can't do it in the garage when she's home too, right? So, but left in the house alone for a few hours and he starts to think, well, I guess I have no choice. He feels pressured to enjoy because he has the opportunity to enjoy, and the worst sin is wasting an opportunity. Yes, what's it called when an oppressive superego makes you feel guilty if you don't take every opportunity to enjoy? I think it's called capitalism, but I'm no economist. Now we return to where we left off. That was footnote number 1. Worse, they forget how hyperspecific love and lust is, and recently a middle-aged guy looks around and thinks college girls today are hotter than they've ever been. Meanwhile, a sophomore can look at identical twin cheerleaders and still need a few beers before he can get it up for the ugly one. You can play the game backwards too. The creepy old perv, aged 35 to 55, is creepy to a sophomore because it's unimaginable that anyone that old still experiences lust in 3D. The simple fact is that he noticed the consequences of an 18 to 24-year-old's computer-engineered bra is evidence of sociopathy, unless those women have been branded as for-profit media combustibles, in which case it's un-American if you don't look. The NFL put a lot of money into designing what's left of those cheerleading uniforms, so unless you want to end up registered on a database, you better not be caught pretending not to notice. Lust wanes with age. And if the old have good characters, they may feel some relief at having escaped such a frenzied and savage master. And if they lament it, and feel like they are being deprived of something very important, then I suspect that youth was hard for them as well. But what blocks all such dialogues isn't the age or the hormone levels, it's the demographic. The hardest thing to swallow is that your lust is not your own. While it feels primal, that there's little innate or instinctive about it. This is not a happy thought, with co-individualism being all the rage of know thyself. You're not going to want to hear about how little of you is you rather than the work product of whatever media agency targets the demo they've decided you're in. You're not taught what to want, but how to want. The modern innovation is to let you You're not taught what to want, but how to want. The modern innovation is to let you think you came up with you on your own. I love a shaved pussy, says the man who just doesn't get it, as this is his genetic prep. God, I messed up the sentence. You're not taught what to want, but how to want. The modern innovation is to let you think you came up with you on your own. I love a shaved pussy, says the man who just doesn't get it, as if this is his genetic preference. Ugh, says some equally oblivious antithesis. It's like you're with a child. Now he has to imagine she's an adult. She's actually an adult. Yes, but he has to imagine it. If you're practicing pieces of images, images of pieces are hard to unsee. When a guy looks at porn back from his own sexual prime, the enthusiastic reaction he has to the now hysterical hair and makeup or decade slash exercise slash diet specific body type is just as reflexive as if it came from 10 gazillion years of natural selection. But it didn't. Large hips are a cue for fecundity. That at least explains why I've always avoided them. Is there a missing word? That at least explains why I've always avoided them. I just love a big ass. Yes, it's the part of her furthest from her face. You mean you can imagine her the way you want? No, you don't have to imagine her at all. She's real. It's possible that the 1985 mustachio and the dark blazer over office gut happened to be born at precisely the time that his unique major histocompatibility preferences coincided with the sudden popularity of white pumps and legs pantyhose, or that these are proxy cultural markers for biological fitness or ovulation. But the alternative explanation is that Bandolino needed market share, so it targeted him as well as women. It told him not just what kinds of women a man can like, but should... Excuse me, let me run that back. It told him not just what kinds of women a man like him should want, but what kinds of men those women would want, which is also why he thought the mustache was a good idea. Okay, but what does it mean that I get turned on by save your breath? I don't know what it means. I only know what it's for, and that it's bad for everyone else. Here is a book about porn. If you are looking for a table of contents for your own analysis, don't bother. The one you'll see here is fake, and I don't think in chapters, only in acts. As consolation, I'll tell you there is a hardcore sex story right at the beginning, and it's about 30 pages long, so you're on notice or you're welcome. I've deliberately not written it well. I'm imitating the flow and style of that kind of porn story. I didn't try to make it unique or sensual, literary, or even erotic. While it is explicit pornography, it is vanilla by most standards. Penis versus vagina, obvious in its language, plot, and tropes. My purpose wasn't to elevate the genre, but to capture it, by which I mean photograph it. I made it easy to assure yourself that there is nothing interesting there. Formulaic escapism devoid of deeper meaning. Its only purpose to facilitate orgasm. And then, well, I guess we'll see what happens next. NB. Is this like a note or something, like, from the author? Because that has not been, like, clarified anywhere. I don't know. NB. It is a specific type of porn story, a cheating wife story. Let me stop you right here and say I'm utterly indifferent to your idiotic complaints. I am not trying to turn you on. I am not trying to explain why it does or does not turn you on. I don't care. Only you care, which is equivalent to no one cares. Whether cheating with porn... Whether cheating wife porn arouses you or nauseates you, it isn't important because those feelings have the same force vector. What you think about those who do like it is also unimportant, though it would be better than 5 years of undergraduate critical theory to have a 10-minute discussion about why it is so important for you to hate the people who like the things you hate because other people like them. What is it about you that wants to blot out the sun whenever anyone says they want summer to come? Want to have that discussion? No. College it is then. If it makes you feel any better, those people you hate will likely be responsible to pay for it. I took out loans. I actually didn't. My assertion is valid in all eventualities. I assure you the cheating wife genre was a random choice. Any porn would have worked here. Romantic, BDSM, incest, alien snuff, the rest would have been the same because the manifest content of the story is fairly irrelevant except to your genitals, which are definitely irrelevant. Forget about what porn you like. It's not about you. You know how I know? You didn't make it. Undoubtedly, someone is going to toss the words heteronormative and individualizing the structural at me, and that person should stop reading immediately. Not just this book, but all books. Your mind is broken, and it is better suited for TV. I don't mean you are stupid, only that you are even more a product of the system you hate than the porn you think you reject. You think of your sexual proclivities. You think your sexual You think your sexual proclivities define you, they are unique to you, distinguish you, that the man who likes forced interracial porn is fundamentally different than the woman who likes softcore lesbian porn. This is wrong. The fact that you both like a porn makes you far more similar than different. Please observe that your oh so personal and disparate kinks are all served by the same handful of websites. We are all brothers and sisters after all. We enjoy it. Surrender ourselves. We praise anyone that affects us most in this way. Footnote number 2. On page 15. This is going to be hundreds of hours of reading. Footnote number 2. 117. Demography doesn't care about ratings. It serves form over content. A demographic is demarcated to serve a media company that appears to serve it. Of course, that company looks no further than its own enrichment, but it will spare no expense to protect itself. It must operate under maximum safety. They count their accomplishments, not by their creations, but by destroying the competition. That sounds like late-stage capitalism. Yes, your demographic was told to believe that. They also told... They also told your demographic was about you They also told you demographic was about who you were similar to, not who you will become similar to. Demography is an oversimplified description suitable for journalism, an old arithmetic approach to describing a world that now requires multivariable calculus. Two completely different people of different age, gender, race, may like completely different TV shows, but if those shows have the same narrative form, then both of those shows will be for the same demographic, which is why they're on the same network. For example, stylized sexuality with high thread count BDSM or stylized violence with gleaming Glock gunplay, for all their advertised hard R transgressiveness, both are firmly within a conventional ethics. In other words, they're dating. And if there's a girl in it, she will finally come up, around, back, or to her senses. And if it's on a network, it will be episodic. Not merely there will be episodes, but that it will be a series of situations with to which characters react rather than a story of desires on which characters act. You may think you're unique in liking completely different things from other people in your demographic, but even you suspect that is a demographic. Gay porn and hetero porn found on the same porn site predict similar reactive consumer psychology, brand loyalty, comfort in the group, the desire to be led. Where was I? That the images are gay or straight is only relevant to you. You will become less so as the early childhood polymorphous perversity becomes a normalized social normalized social requirement of a system that gives you what everybody else wants. Hey, it's all good. You're the boss. Who am I to disagree? Is this pornographic? My boobs are kind of flabby. Who decides? Right. You're the boss. Who am I to disagree? Unable to find your way... God, what the fuck am I doing? Unable to find satisfaction in your finite choices, what you want now is for the choices to look infinite, which is why your demographic's most reliable porn preference is content aggregators. That's not a kind of porn. Who decides? It's just easier to find what I want if it's all in one place. You do know that's not really a place and the search occurs in a different place anyway? Yet knowing this won't stop you from doing this. You think you want the content, but your history shows it's only the form. You keep coming back for the system, and it obliges. It lets you be autonomous and individuated and pursue your unique interests. It lets you think that you came up with them on your own. It only asks that you use your unique individual autonomy here, not there. Yes, that's what it's called when it's a benevolent consumer superego absolves you from guilt by offering only what is possible to want. I think it's called a tyranny, but I'm no historian. We return back to the main passage, still on page 15. As much as everyone believes their sexuality is fundamental to their identity, no one would say their actual sexual past is indicative of their identity. It's different with you. Those other people didn't count. I know. Neither is there anything to be gained by analyzing the kinds of porn you like as a window into your soul. It is meaningless in any way chosen for you to like. Have you ever fallen asleep looking at porn? Yes. Yet that fact is far more telling than the image you fell asleep to. It doesn't matter what you want or why you want. It only matters how you want. You can count the drinks and pretend it's informative, but too many times I've grabbed the bottle to pour myself the nth drink only to discover I hadn't finished the n-1th drink. The glass was still half full or empty. Yeah, I literally grabbed this downstairs and it was like half full. I thought I finished it. So, you think the truth can be found by solving for n? So consider this your final warning. I have written a book, and the only thing I use in this book is words. Everything else that happens is your fault. How far my efforts agree with those of other writers, I will not decide. What I've written here makes no claim to novelty in points of detail, and therefore I give no sources. I do not care whether what I've thought was already thought before me by someone else. So shut it. I have not ornamented or stuffed this work with bombastic, foot-and-a-half long words, superfluous ornamentation, or any other stylistic graces that might make the rhetoric more pleasing, and unless you're a gynecologist, don't tell me I need more regular periods. I've read both of the primary sources, and it doesn't say that anywhere. I've avoided the use of jargon. At most, you will find id, ego, superego, which I don't even use correctly on purpose, and I use bemused as a synonym for nonplussed. Good luck. I've tried to make this book as simple as possible, so if there's a part that you can't understand, not agree with, understand, then you should ask, whether the problem is your own resistance. If at the end you conclude that I'm wrong, then either you will be right or you will be a liar. That's a big difference, and there are no other possibilities. You should take your time and double check your math. In this book, you will find one sentence that will engage you and one sentence that will enrage you, and if you tell both those sentences to anyone else, they will have all the information necessary to determine whether to sleep with you or abandon you at a rest stop. Will this book help me learn more about myself? Ugh, the whole earth is sick of your search for knowledge. In here, you will not find explanations. I am not offering you information. This is an attempt to destroy the wisdom of the wise and frustrate the intelligence of the intelligent. But is this book accurate? Your question is meaningless. In America, we divide our books between fiction and nonfiction, not fact and non-fact. The standard is the fiction. The standard is the green. This is not a deconstruction of the text. It is the interpretation of a dream. I am not looking to explain the meaning of pornography in general, only how it's used by you. Let's face it, you're the only one you really care about anyway. Final warning! This is not a good book, and no, you will not like it. If I had more time to write, to read, to think, maybe I could have done a better job, or at least caught the typos. Who knows? I'm not a good writer. No, I can't see that. Other person. Hold on. I'm not a good writer or person. I think in life I did fulfill my primary duty, but I didn't keep a ledger, and anyway, it's not really for me to say. But if I had to write it in a car during stolen time in the middle of the woods or night, and eventually took a global pandemiconium for me to Philip K. Dick the book during a manic week off just to get what you see here. But the more time passes, the greater risk of apathy, personal tragedies, alcoholic hallucinosis, or the measured judgment of advancing age, all of which would result in no book at all. Publish and perish. Stabs the spur. Time's running out. Well, there's my whole introduction. I fully agree that it is completely useless, but since it's been written, let it stand. And now to business. It is customary in these introductions to thank the people who assisted in this work, but this is not the kind of project that permits outside help. You have to be alone. That's the end of the disclaimer. I will read these now. I will now read these two quotes. First quote on the adjacent page. The best of what you can know cannot be said to boys. Mark, chapter 1, verse 34. I honestly forgot the formatting before when we were reading the Job passage. And then on the next page of the spread, also this was in Times New Roman, and this one is in Comic Sans. So I guess a sort of, the dichotomy is crazy. A journalist is interviewing a psychiatrist. A journalist is interviewing a physicist about multidimensional mathematics. The journalist says, I can sort of see how you might visualize 5 dimensions, but how can anybody possibly visualize 13 dimensions? It's really quite easy, says the physicist. First, you visualize it in n dimensions. Then let n equals 13. And that's the end of the disclaimer. Hope you enjoyed this. I don't give a fuck, so I'm not editing it, and I'm pretty much just stitching together the 2 clips that I took, and you get to hear all of my mistakes, my very mild commentary, and mess-ups and whatever. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will be continuing to read this in its subsequent acts. I guess I will also, like, give the page numbers for, like, when, I guess, like, a section ends or an act, as Mr. TLP says. So yeah, I don't know, like, how this is really, like... Sorry, I was just kind of flipping through this. However it's divided in acts, I will give the page numbers and divide it that way, and, you know... Yeah. See you next time.